If the Sony A7 IV came out in November 2022, a year later, for the same price of $2,400, pounds, euros, would I buy it and would I recommend it to you? Let's find out. That was just a little something this camera has been used for over the last year. It's been a workhorse for me. I've used it for weddings, portrait photo shoots, model photo shoots, you could call them the same thing, videos like this one, all of my YouTube videos, use this camera, which is why it's not in my hand right now, used it on holidays, you name it, I've taken this camera everywhere. So I've got to know all the little quirks and all the great things about the camera. Let's start with the photos. This camera takes fantastic photos. That's right, you're looking at some of them right now, and yeah, I shoot RAW just so I get the full 14 stops of dynamic range that I can then edit this photo, tweak it how I like, but straight out of the camera, fantastic photos, no issues whatsoever. The autofocus works every single time. I've not noticed as many issues as others had when they saw their eyelashes were in focus instead of the eyes, even after I've gone over from version 1 to 1.1 to 1.2. The whole camera for photos has been fantastic for me, and I hope you find the same thing because these photos really are fantastic. The video features is one of my main reasons for moving over from Nikon to Sony, and this camera has not disappointed me. I love using this for filming anything and everything. Film it for my YouTube videos, like I've said already, and I use it just for everything. I love the quality of the 4K 24. It's oversampled, which means I can zoom in and it holds its detail and its ground pretty well. I normally shoot an S-Log3, but I've switched around with S-Cinesone, and that's also very good. So this one I'm filming right now is on S-Cinesone, but I would normally chop and change with the S-Log3 and the S-Cinesone. And if I'm using S-Log3, I use the Phantom LUTs, which are fantastic, and a lot of people love them. So that's my go-to setup for the videos. Now, whilst we're on the topic of videos, this camera is fantastic for photos, as I've already said, and the majority of the video features are fantastic. But a year later, do I regret something, or would I make something better? Well, yes, there is something. It's the 4K 60. A lot of people complain about it. It's a 1.5x crop. And that's probably one of the reasons why I don't use that feature. I tend to defer back to the 4K, the 1080p 120 frames per second, because the framing is the same for me. If I go from 4K 24 to 4K 60, it crops in 1.5 times, which means I have to move back a few steps, and it just doesn't look the same with the same lens. Whereas going from 4K 24 to HD 120p, sure, the quality isn't great, but at least I'm standing in the same place, and that's pretty good. So a year later, I would say I don't use the 4K 60 as much as I'd like to, Probably the only thing I use it for is the product photography or filming videos when it's 4K and slow, and it's a very controlled environment, so that's fine. But for uncontrolled environments, I'd probably prefer the 4K 60 at the same rate as my 4K 24. So a year later, I probably would say that's one thing I would change. But having said that, a lot of cameras coming out right now, towards the end of 2022, still have a crop factor when they're shooting at 60 frames per second. So yeah, not a deal breaker, but it is annoying. The one thing I would say that they could have not skimped out on is the LCD screen, because it's got 977, maybe 1 million dot LCD screen, and my RX 100 Mark V has more pixels in it than this screen here. So maybe if they spent $5 more and increased the quality to 3 million dots, it would have been nice. And that's one thing that I don't like, but it's okay. Don't use it much. It would have been nice to have moved that up, the quality a little bit up, and made me and other people happy. Now, there's some things I don't like about this camera, but there are so many more things I love about this camera. The build quality, for instance, is fantastic. I mean, build quality nowadays on most mirrorless cameras coming from DSLRs has been fantastic. I've thrown this in my bag and it's been thrown around a lot. And it's fine. It's got a few dings and bats, but it's absolutely fine. It works. Everything is in working order. Every button works. The layout of buttons is fantastic. I love the customized button that I can just change it to my ISO on the right side. That works. The dial with the buttons on every corner is fantastic. So ergonomically, this camera is fantastic, and it served me pretty well once I've customized it to my liking. Now, there have been a few issues, at least people think there have been a few issues on this camera that I want to get out of the way as well, which I haven't come across. And that's the overheating side of things and the battery life. People have complained about those. People always complain about battery life. That has not been an issue for me, and a lot of other people. I've filmed an entire wedding with 2 camera batteries, which is pretty good. And the second one had probably about 70% left over. So that's a whole day with just 1.3 battery. That's pretty good, right? This camera, for me, hasn't had any heating issues either because, well, I live in London, so apart from the heat wave that happened about 6 months ago, it's not very hot, and it survived pretty well. 4K 60 works, no overheating signs, even for me, so yeah, all good. This camera also has a couple of really cool features, and the first for most Sony cameras, it was the first one to have breathing, focus breathing compensation, and what that means is if I move from here to here, some of the cameras or some of the lenses have focus breathing, which means when you change the focus, you'd see the background moving quite a lot because it's changing focus and the lenses are moving. So that's one of the things that it had built in, and what that meant, it basically cropped in a bit, but it meant that the focus was pretty smooth. Doesn't matter where I go, it was pretty good. And I've used that a few times. I have a few G Master lenses and I use that sometimes. So that's pretty cool. But the focus map feature, the one where you've got the Lego grid of blue and red and yellow and only the bit that's in focus shows up, haven't used that much. I know they're pushing that to all the cameras. It's good that it's there. Not really a fan of it. But yeah. So if I was to take stock of this camera after a year, it's got fantastic ergonomics and handling. Battery life is fantastic. Autofocus is absolutely fantastic. The video recording and the photos, at least what the photos come out as, are fantastic as well. So wow, there's a lot of fantastic stuff. Sure, it has a few ifs and buts around the LCD screen. Could have been a better quality. The 4K 60 crop has meant that I don't really use 4K 60 as much as I would like to. People would say go and buy an A7S3, it's really expensive, whatever. So yeah, there's a few things that I don't really like, a few features in there which, you know, are not for me. But a year later, in 2022, if you were to say, hey Sohail, there's a brand new camera called A7IV version 2, or whatever they want to call it, A742, would you buy it? Well, yes, I would. I think I would buy this camera again, and I would probably recommend that everyone buy it as well. We look back over the last year, and there have been quite a few cameras being released. A lot of them have features this camera has. Canon have recently released the R6 Mark II, which is fantastic, but also very expensive in comparison. So yes, there are a lot of options out there, but for the price and the value and the quality of the delivery of the photos, videos, autofocus, which are the 3 key things that anyone looks for, this does the trick. So yeah, if you do buy this camera after watching this, then I have a lot of other videos that you can watch on this camera. Or if you already got this camera, then watch them as well. And that's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe without this, looks a bit off. Yeah.